Welcome into the Big E Breakdown. EKU Sports Network crew here with you talking EKU football. Gentlemen, great to be back with you all, and we got a fun show to talk. Recap the Tarleton State game, and then we'll look ahead to Central Arkansas on Saturday. First, before we start against Tarleton, here we go. Cowboy hat. Brought us luck last week. Here we go. We're ready to go. All right. So that's a
Your
fun
hat
game last
wasn't,
week.
Oh
yeah, it was
gosh.
tremendous. Your hat's not quite as stylish as linebacker Braden Sullivan's that he wore on the plane. That thing looked good. You went
Mine
the
was
cheap route.
9.99.
Yeah, his was
I'd be
maybe
surprised if
one
he didn't
ninety.
get it at Bucky's.
Yeah.
Put a little beaver hat on top of it. Yeah. But no, what a fun game that was.
It was a pressure pack game. I tell you what, it was humid. We had to kind of lean all over the place in the press box to see at times. And I was worn out by the end of it because, you think about last year, we had 7 games go down to the final possession and most of them to the final play or two. This year, we had all double figure games, wins and losses. There wasn't, we kind of knew what was going to happen. And this one was like testy all the way. There was no separation outside of their 10-0 lead. And, thumbs up to the way the Colonels ran the football, the way the offensive line blocked, and thumbs up to the defense. They really played well, shutout football in the second half.
I think it's a testament, an example of how turnovers can affect a game. The Colonels get back into it. The interception kind of turned the momentum the Colonels' way. You can look a little bit farther west at what the Colonels' opponent for this upcoming week, Central Arkansas, did. They turned the ball over 6 times, give Utah Tech their first win of the season. So I think turnovers are just huge, not only in the fact that it's changing possession of the game, but momentum swings so much on turnovers. There's such a big play and emotionally just charging that teams can turn on a dime and make the game different. And that's exactly what the Colonels did. They turned on a dime after hey, we're back in this thing. They get a score, they make it close. And then from that point on, it's just 50-50 balls. And we'll get more into that as we start talking about it. But that was the difference in the game besides the turnovers is going one-on-one, man coverage on the outside, throwing 50-50 balls. The Colonels got more going their way than did Tarleton State. And I think you combine those two factors, what a win for the Colonels. Yeah, I was with you, Greg. It was very draining. It just seemed like all the momentum swings and just so much emotion involved that I was worn out just like you were at the end of that one.
You think about that momentum swing with the interception, but remember it came the play right after Eastern Kentucky gets down to the goal line.
Yeah.
And that was the fumble or was the one they couldn't get in?
It was, I
Because they
think, the one they couldn't get
Couldn't
in.
get in. Yeah. The
right.
fumble happened
Right.
later.
So I mean, twice they're inside the 5 yard line and something bad comes up, and yet that just totally momentum, and then the momentum switched on one play, and a freshman out there making it with the help of Mike Smith. I want to say something about the defense because there were plenty of reasons why a lot of people thought that Walt Wells should change defensive coordinators. He's a patient guy in that situation. He knows his room, he knows his staff, and he had long conversations with Jake Johnson and talked about here's what you need to do, here's where we need to go, made some tweaks in the coaching staff and the way they administer position by position. And this defense has played much better. Is it the greatest defense ever? No, but it's a lot better than it was. Now, this week could change my thoughts on that, but I just kind of ran some numbers, so bear with me here real quick. Eastern Kentucky has done a whole lot better on defense. They have had their opponents 83 and a half yards a game less per game total defense, 77 and a half less passing yards, 8.8 points less per game than they did last year. And they gave up 35 touchdown passes last year, and they have only allowed through 9 games, 2 less, 14 this year. And last year, remember on those, I call explosives 40 plus, I think coaches use 20. Last year, 16 40-plus plays, and of those 16, 10 were for touchdowns. This year, 6 40-plus plays for 3 touchdowns. Less explosives, better defense. I think the secondary's better. And let's get back to that 50-50 ball and the strategy that Walt Wells and Jake Johnson used to stop a high-powered Tarleton offense.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to load the box, if you're going to put 6, 7, 8 hats in the box, and I'm using Nathan Brown, the Central Arkansas coach, as I talked to him today. If you're going to put that many hats in the box, then you're going man. You're going with those corners on islands, not a whole lot of safety help for them. So those guys are under a lot more pressure when you're really committing your defense to stopping the run. And what 50-50 balls mean when coaches talk about that is they're basically throwing it up and it's 50-50 as to who's going to make the play. Is the receiver going to make the play or is the defensive back going to make the play? And on this particular Saturday night in Tarleton, it was the EKU Colonel defensive backs that were making the play. And that's not always been the case. I mean, on a broader scale, to go back to what you were talking about, Greg, on a broader scale, really the only game I felt like that the defense had a bad game this season was the Southern Utah game. You could make an argument about Abilene Christian, but they were on the field for so long in that game. Sooner or later, you're going to find a crack or two, and that offense probably one of the top 2 offenses of the FCS opponents I think that we've seen all year long. So Southern Utah just was an aberration. I think this is a really good defense, or at least in the conversation to be a really good defense. They have their weaknesses at times, but that defensive line and the ability to interchange parts there and still get performance. You have guys that are out there in a starting role. You have guys that can come in and spell them, and they're getting pressure on opposing quarterbacks, and they're able to stop the run when the linebackers come up to help them, and even the safeties when they have to. So, I think the numbers bear it out that you had, but I also think that this team has just been making plays on defense, especially from the front 7.
Well, the other thing that they did was when they went in, I know that they said no 4-man front. And they did the analytics on what Victor Gabalis could do deep. And on the deep 50-50 balls, he was at about 11%. That was their analytics. So they played the numbers. And then early on, down those sidelines, EKU gave up about 4 20 to 30-yard passes, and it looked dire for a while. But after Gabalis started 7 of 9, it wasn't pretty. He was 10 of 32 the rest of the way. He was picked off 3 times. And he went 4 of 17 in the second half. So now, I do think when we get to the next game, it's going to be tougher because other teams have seen what EKU is doing, and this is a similar team with great running backs that's coming into Richmond. Plus, on the other side, game management has been really good with the rushing game. It's been the best it's been in a long time. But draws, RPOs, the other team has more on tape to prepare for. And when we flip it over and talk about the Bears more in depth, they can stop the run. They can stop the run really well because of number 8.
Yeah, and I think that I think the Colonels are probably going to have to get a little more safety help against this Central Arkansas team. Gabalis and McIlvain, 2 totally different animals. McIlvain can be accurate deep down the field. I thought going in Gabalis, some of the things that I had seen, and again, this is just tape and watching tape, I felt like he was a little more inaccurate the deeper down the field that he went, and we saw that bear out in the second half of that game. He can get amped up, especially if he feels like going into the play. If he feels like or reads the defense that he's going to get single coverage, he tends to kind of overthrow a little bit. Went back and watched some and saw that again in some previous games leading up to the Eastern game. So I think a different animal when you get to Central Arkansas. When we flip the script, we'll talk about McIlvain a little bit more.
Well, how many times?
Do you think it's all Wes's hat? That's the reason why they won.
Oh, yeah. No doubt. No doubt. Well, how many times did his receivers, Gabalis' receivers, help him out there in the first half as well? How many leaping grabs did Cooper have, Amayabu, there in that first half? There were a couple of them. So really you think back to those, and Gabalis was not really accurate to an extent in the first half. He just had some help from his receivers as well. And then the defense was made some big plays. And Mike Smith got that tip for Galva's interception and then had the game winner where we had a mini heart attack. But in the end, he made the plays when we needed him to.
I was a little bit surprised that, and I think this kind of goes back to our comment that we made about the defensive line getting pressure on Gabalis. They didn't get to use their tight end as much as I had seen them do in previous games because they were leaving him in for protection. And they weren't bringing those guys out and kind of trolling them underneath to get an extra check down for Gabalis. He probably was not going to see him anyway because the pressure was getting to him. But they had to bring that tight end in and use him for protection so much. They weren't allowed to utilize him in an offense that they had before that point used the tight ends a little bit more.
This conference is crazy and it's wild now. I mean, you've got 5 teams within a game and a half of each other. Remember when EKU was getting beat and going into the game with Tarleton being a favorite, it could have been a 2-team race right now. It could have been next week, not this Saturday, but next week's not Central Arkansas, but next week's ACU against Tarleton game. And now it's not. And this conference, I think, definitely deserves 2 bids to the playoff, but that's down the road stuff. But it may get down to a committee room what the second team is making it because there are so many scenarios now. It's almost like a Rubik's Cube or trying to figure out the ASUN baseball format in postseason play, which is a little bizarre.
Good luck with that.
This is just a lot of, I still hung up on that. I don't know why.
Well, real quick before we flip the script to UCA, we talked a lot about the defense. I believe Andy Richmond deserves a lot of praise too for how he called that game. The passing game was not working. You go into this ball game, you tell any of the 3 of us we're only going to throw for 31 yards. We might say it's going to be a tough day to be a Colonel. But the game plan brought in by Richmond, Morrissey was outstanding. Getting out of the pocket, showed a lot of grit, a lot of toughness. Kudos to Matt Morrissey for how he game managed, like we've been talking about, the situation with the offense.
He got a lot of street cred for how hard he played and how much he became a leader in that game. But also kudos to the offensive line. Clean. Now they've got the 5 they want out there. Green's got that one job at guard now, kind of locked down over Bunn. And they're fairly healthy. They've kind of been moving parts a little bit. And so I think that was a big thing. And how about this? Mark Elder's offensive coordinator the last year Mark was here as the head coach, Adam Austin, he is now 0-3, twice as quarterbacks coach, and this year also the offensive coordinator against EKU. I know it's driving their president, who is from Kentucky, a U Pike and Morehead State graduate, crazy because EKU's got Tarleton's number.
All right, now
I'll back up Wes. I think that he called a fantastic game, knowing that he had to manage the game. Morrissey manages it to Richmond specifications. And then throw in just a career day for Josh Carter. He continues. I think he gets better as the game goes on. He's gotten better as the season goes on. Just continues to look so good carrying the ball, has that great lean, gets yards after contact. And speaking of yards after contact, how about Morrissey taking hits? Every time you hold your breath, but he's been so tough, taking hits, getting an extra yard or 2, and moving the sticks. In that game, he kept the sticks moving, kept the ball in their possession, and gave them the chance at the end that they needed to win the game.
We always mark 3rd down conversions, but there probably ought to be a stat about what you get on 1st down. Yeah. If that was on your stat monitor, when I talk to Walt Wells and when you talk to other coaches, Jim, they all talk about winning 1st down. Colonels won 1st down this time. Guess what? The other team coming in here wants to win 1st down defensively and offensively. So let's watch 1st downs. We'll give Wes something else to do back there in our booth. Chart how many yards do they get per 1st down? And this is a scary team that can can stop you on defense and move the ball on offense.
Well, I mean, it's a simple game. I mean, if you win first down, if you're a rushing offense, which eighth rushing offense in the country with Central Arkansas coming in here, if you're a rushing offense, and EKU wants to do the same thing, if you win first down, second and third down, if it's second and 2, 3, third and 1, 2, if those short yardage situations occur, your rushing offense is going to be able to convert those. You're going to keep the ball. You're going to shorten the game. You're going to keep the other offense off the field. I mean, everything, if first, it's so key, and it seems so trite, but it is. I mean, it's so key to winning first down, making those short yardage situations for a rushing offense, lets them keep the ball. And it's real hard for the other team to score if their offense isn't on the field. Such a simple game. It's funny how that works, isn't it?
Yeah, and so the biggest news you got is probably that Derek Powell, who tweaked a hamstring in the UNA game, made the trip out west, is listed as probable, didn't play with the hamstring last week. And so we expect him to go. Remember, he was at UNA 2 years ago, then went to Central Arkansas last year. He was banged up a little bit last year. He rushed for 218 yards against EKU 2 seasons ago. And he is probably, of all these great backs, so there are 5 great backs in the UAC, he's probably the speediest and the one that can break the long one the quickest. I was really impressed with the Lamson, but we know what Shanderick Powell can do too. And to bottle him up is going to be a big, big challenge for this EKU defense.
Well, he's so speedy, and another guy that can get yards after contact. But you finally think that you've got him figured out, and they bring in Darius Hale, who's just a bowling ball type of guy. 2 different styles, and they can pose a lot of problems for the other team's defense. They just both of them together, yards after contact. I'd love to see that stat together. I'll have to look that one up for a Saturday. But my goodness, just continue to keep running, churning, keeping the legs going, bouncing off people. You really have to be 100% in your tackling form to be able to get him down on first hit.
Let me ask you this: as you prepare for the game, would you, as an EKU fan or coach or player, be more worried about that dynamic rushing duo and what they could do to you? Or are you more worried about David Walker, 2-time All-America, getting looks, maybe the Buck Buchanan Award winner? He was a finalist last year, and his numbers are amazing this year. 18 and a half tackles for loss, 9 quarterback sacks. He's made 3 TFLs in 4 games this year. He was disruptive against EKU last season, even though both teams put up a lot of yards. Who are you more worried about, the 2 runners or the guy that stops the run and does a little bit of everything as their edge rusher?
Well, 2 reasons. One, because last week the EKU rush defense was fairly good. So, if they can repeat half that performance, then yeah, I'm thinking you're going to be in at least decent enough shape to be in the game at the end. The other thing is, I've watched David Walker on tape. You want to it's a master class. It's a clinic. And this is from the linebacker spot. You're not talking about a defensive end. You're not talking about a guy who's bull rushing from the edge, coming and getting into the backfield. You're talking about a linebacker who has the speed to make up the ground to tackle a guy behind the line of scrimmage. He's starting off the ball 3 or 4 yards. It's not like he's blitzing every other time. So, yeah, David Walker scares me to death. Nightmares about that guy. I wouldn't want to be a guy carrying the ball. He is fantastic, and on tape, he's even more impressive.
I heard your interview. Real quick, I heard your interview, or part of your interview that you sent me with Nathan Brown. To me, I heard something in between, reading between the lines. He thinks he can get Matt Morrissey off kilter. I think they are going to go at Matt Morrissey and turn him into something that they couldn't do to Parker McKinney. And they've got a good chance at that. And we'll see how Matt Morrissey and the protection handles that. To me, that the big target was on him. Did you read that the same way?
Absolutely. He had a phrase in there, and they'll hear it on Know You Foe on Saturday, but he said twists and stunts. And my eyebrows shot up. He's going to design, or at least scheme, his defense to stopping Morrissey no matter what. Try to scheme for the RPO, try to have a hat on the quarterback and the guy who's the release valve, and basically say you're going to have to beat our pass rush. They think their pass rush is one of the best in the conference, and with Walker back there, I can't argue with it too much, but they want to get all the pressure they can and make EKU beat them with somebody else. And if I'm a coach going into this game, it's probably the way I would go. And I don't even make the money they do. So, yeah, I think that's exactly. I think reading between the lines, you didn't have to do too much. I think that's what Nathan Brown's going to try to do to the Colonels.
For the guys that returned from last year's game, does that give them any sort of edge the way it ended last year with the 46-yard Hail Mary?
I mean, nowadays with all the portal, even though I think UCA's done a great job of tamping down portal hoppers some way, somehow, I don't see it. I mean, once kickoff, it'll be more prominent in our pregame.
I think
it will be during the game.
I think go ahead, Jim.
I was just going to say, I think that the memory of this day and age college athlete is so short term. I don't think that it's even an issue. It's just not. Those types of games used to hang around with players before, but I don't think now. And I know I'm sounding like Gramps down there here in a minute, but I don't think the players. I just think their memory is very, very short term. I think that they don't hold on to that stuff, and it's all forgotten almost by the end of the plane ride to go home.
I haven't forgotten it. I mean, it wasn't as devastating as the Boise fourth down touchdown in the last minute of the national championship game in Sacramento. And because it was Kentucky and you almost pulled the big upset, the 2 touchdowns, then they make that fourth down play in the end zone to send it to overtime. Those were tougher, but that one wasn't fun because EKU, and then there was that clock malfunction. I got a little grumpy about the clock, didn't I, down in Texas? I mean, the guy was running the play clock.
And the officials, but I did
just
too.
a button.
Yeah, it's just a button. Push it, man.
Well, I think it's one of the best rivalries in the UAC now by far. And I want to come up with all these rivalries have cool nicknames. We got to come up with a cool nickname for this. The Battle of something.
Jim, he's got one. He's just waiting for us to come up one. He's gonna.
I don't have one. I don't have
one.
I sense a setup.
No,
I
don't have one. That's why I tossed it out to you.
Maybe we can get them a trophy to battle for, something like an old plow.
Yeah, so rivalries are different. Used to when we had any semblance of geographic connections, which we don't anymore, they made sense. Now, the old Oaken Bucket in Indiana, what do they play for in, I don't know, in Alabama and Auburn? Is that the Iron Bowl?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
Eastern, Western, the Battle of the Bluegrass, whatever. But now, I mean, there's not a lot of connection between Central Arkansas and Eastern Kentucky, except for the fact that they played twice in the COVID year, and they were both great games, and they've been close games. And so I think you got to have a rival, and it was Western Kentucky for years and decades. And then when Jacksonville State came in and Western hightailed it out of the OVC, they were the 2 best teams, and we had great games with Jacksonville State. And now Central Arkansas's kind of taken the place since they left the Southland. But I'm blank on coming up with a name for this thing. I just don't see any connection. But we're speechless.
We got some time. We got some time to figure it out. All right. Our coverage begins at 1:30 Eastern on Saturday, and the Colonels and the Bears kick it off from CG Bank Field at Roy Kidd Stadium. 6th edition should be a fun one. Previous 5 have been real fun, so we'll see how this one shapes out. Thanks for your time, guys.
All right. We'll see you on Saturday. We're all busy doing basketball, too. It's crazy season. We'll catch it at Roy Kidd Stadium.
Go Big E.
See you guys.